All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. This is Michigan Indian Legal Services, along with the University of Detroit Mercy Law School and Michigan Legal Help, presenting an overview of Michigan's new Clean Slate laws. My name is Norika Kita Betty. I'm one of the attorneys at Michigan Indian Legal Services, and I'll be kind of moderating tonight's event along with Hank Fields, who is also from Michigan Indian Legal Services. He's our pro bono and communications director. And we're very glad to have you all here tonight. We also have 4 great presenters with us, and we're really excited for them to share this important information with you all. Our presenters include Judge Michelle Rick, who's a judge on the Michigan Court of Appeals for the 4th District. Prior to becoming a Court of Appeals judge, Judge Rick served as a Michigan Circuit Court judge for the 29th Circuit. And in addition to her role as a judge, Judge Rick teaches the Access to Justice class at the University of Detroit Mercy Law School. We're lucky to have Judge Rick and 3 of her third-year law school students with us tonight, Deja Davis, Nadine Debaja, and Eric Chaika. And our final presenter from Michigan Legal Help is Staff Attorney Mike Keeney. And he, at his role at Michigan Legal Help, develops content for the website, including the expungement resources that he will talk more about tonight. And before I turn it over to our presenters, I would like to let everyone know that if you do have a general question that comes up during the presentation, you can post it in the comments on the Facebook page. And at the end of the presentation, we will answer as many questions as we can. The presentation will be recorded and it will be posted on the Michigan Indian Legal Services website, as well as other places, including the Supreme Court website. So if you missed it, or if you think someone else you know would benefit from it, you can come back to those places and watch it again. Finally, at the end of the presentation, we'll ask that you complete a short survey with feedback on the presentation tonight, and we will be posting a link for that survey on Facebook as well. So thank you all for joining us, and at this point, I'll turn it over to Judge Rick.
Thank you very much, Norika. As Norika indicated, in addition to working as a judge on the Court of Appeals, I teach a class called Access to Justice at the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law. And while my students have regular coursework, they also each have the requirement of providing 30 hours of volunteer services to help people in the community access justice. Tonight, you're going to hear from 3 of my stellar students, Nadine, Deja, and Eric. They are going to give you detailed information on the significant changes to Michigan's expungement laws. Hopefully, these changes will allow more people to clear their records with greater ease so they can get on with life. A recent University of Michigan study revealed that less than 7% of the people who are eligible to receive an expungement actually go through the process and get one. The process has been known to be complicated, time-consuming, and costly. We know that having records expunged can lead to better jobs, secure housing, access to student loans and public benefits, and a host of other things. Tonight's presentation is informative. We will have time, as Norika indicated, at the end to hear some questions from our listeners. We will do our very best to get you the information you need. Having said that, I must also indicate that we cannot, however, provide legal advice, nor answer hypothetical questions or case-specific questions. That would be improper because the students are not yet lawyers, And I cannot answer those questions because of my position. We hope that you will learn from this evening's presentation, and we hope that by explaining the changes in Michigan's expungement laws, that it will allow you and your loved ones better access to justice. And with that, I will turn over the microphone to Nadine, and she can take it away.
Thank you, Judge Rick, and thank you, Norica, for the wonderful introduction. Thank you to Michigan Indian Legal Services for allowing us to work on this project. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully everyone who we have in audience tonight and everyone who views this presentation afterwards gains something from it. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for being with us tonight. First, I'll start by distinguishing between record sealing and expungement. I want to make this distinction because depending on the state that you live in, each could have different implications. Record sealing is where your criminal record still exists in the physical sense, but it is hidden from the public. Expungement, on the other hand, at least in Michigan, is the deletion of any record that an arrest or criminal charge ever occurred. However, law enforcement and courts will be able to see those records even after expungement. And in Michigan specifically, law enforcement retains a non-public record of convictions if they choose to so see. Next slide, please. So the Clean Slate initiative is a set of criminal justice reform bills that were signed on October 12th, 2020. House Bills 4980 through 4985 and House Bill 5120, all signed by Governor Whitmer. And the goal of the Clean Slate initiative really was to make it easier for people who have committed certain felonies and misdemeanors to have their record expunged. And we'll go over the benefits of doing that later. The date the new laws will take effect is coming up very soon, in just a few days, April 11th, 2021. And that is the day when people can begin the application process for expungement under the new laws. So, as some of you may already know, and as Judge Rick and I have already mentioned, there are certain aspects of our everyday lives that can be significantly affected by a criminal record. In fact, we may be prohibited from engaging in certain activities because of that criminal record. And so the benefits of having a clean record after expungement include, but are not limited to, looking for a new job, seeking a professional license, taking out a loan, applying for college, chaperoning or participating in children's schooling, international travel, housing opportunities, and ultimately peace of mind. And just to comment on housing opportunities, many landlords will use past convictions to disqualify applicants from renting homes. And a lot of the times, this is not really an explicit term in the contracts for buying houses, but sometimes it does end up being a barrier between the landlord and the potential tenant. House Bill 4980 creates an automatic system for the clearing of criminal records without an application. Under this bill, you can have up to 2 nonviolent felony convictions and 4 misdemeanors automatically expunged without an application. However, this bill does have a 2-year implementation period, meaning that a plan for enforcement and execution is still being put together. So it won't actually go into effect until the end or the middle of 2023. But good news, if you don't want to wait until automatic expungement is effective, you do have the option of applying under what's going to be current law in just a few days on April 11th. Before I get into the details of eligibility for expungement, I want to mention that Michael Keeney from Michigan Legal Help will share a tool later on in the presentation that you can all use to determine whether or not you are eligible for expungement under the new law. The first thing you need to be aware of in determining whether you're eligible for expungement is the number of convictions that you have on your record. Before the new laws passed, most people with records were not eligible to apply because they had more than 1 felony or 2 misdemeanors on their record, as you can see on the left side of the chart here in the PowerPoint. Now, however, the new expungement laws expand eligibility to up to 3 felony convictions and an unlimited number of misdemeanors. The new law counts multiple convictions arising out of the same event as one if the convictions were not assaultive, did not involve use of a dangerous weapon, and are not punishable by more than 10 years in prison. My colleague Eric will discuss later on in the presentation this second point about multiple convictions a little later on in the presentation, so stay tuned for that. And additionally, I do want to mention that prior dismissals or deferments can impact your eligibility for expungements, so make sure you look out for that in your application. The next thing you want to be aware of in determining whether you're eligible for expungement is the type of convictions you have on your record. This is important because under the new laws, there are certain convictions that cannot be cleared from your record through expungement, which means that if you do engage in the expungement process for certain crimes, your record may not be completely clear of other crimes that are ineligible under the new laws. Those type of convictions include, but are not limited to, child sexually abusive activity and producing, distributing, or possessing such material, using a computer to solicit a minor, first, second, or third degree criminal sexual conduct, as well as any fourth degree criminal sexual conduct convictions after January 12th, 2015, child abuse generally, second offense domestic violence, human trafficking, certain traffic offenses, which Eric will discuss in detail a little bit later, and felony offenses punishable by life in prison, among other things. I will include a disclaimer here. This is a list of types of convictions that cannot be cleared from your record, but as you complete the application, make sure to check whether your specific crime is eligible for expungement under the new law. If you don't know what you're convicted of, you can conduct a search on a platform called iChat, which my colleague Deja will discuss in her portion of the presentation. And I'll hand it off to Deja now.
Thank you, Nadine. Hello, everyone. My name is Deja Davis. I will be discussing the application process as a whole. I will go through the basic instructions and highlight some important information to keep in mind when applying. So Nadine has discussed who is eligible. The next step is when to actually apply. So applying for expungement, right now, it depends. According to Safe and Just Michigan, those wanting to file an application under the new Clean Slate law should wait until after April 11th to apply. If you were to submit your application prior to this date, it's soon, so within a few days before it actually goes into act, you risk being denied if you're not eligible before the new laws take effect. As for the waiting period, this changes under the new law. So now it's 3 years for misdemeanors, 5 years for serious misdemeanors or 1 felony, and 7 years for multiple felonies. And this starts after the person has or they're free of contact with the justice system. So on these waiting periods, it starts after the date you were convicted, the date you completed probation, the date you were discharged from incarceration or parole, or the date you were released from prison, whichever occurred last. And not all of these events may apply to your situation, as you may have not been in prison or been paroled or put on probation. So it's definitely specific to your situation. Next slide, please. Thank you. And there's a possibility of a new conviction, and we just warn that you be careful. If you are charged with a new crime or get a new conviction while you're waiting to apply to have a different conviction set aside, it could affect your case. In your hearing, the judge must decide whether setting aside your conviction is consistent with public welfare, and any new criminal activity can influence the judge's decision. So we have the templates for the application to set aside a conviction. This is the basic set aside conviction application. If you are seeking to have an eligible conviction set aside under the specific Michigan law, this is the one you'll use. But if you were committed an offense that's a direct result of you being a victim of human trafficking, or if you have a misdemeanor marijuana related conviction to set aside, there are 2 other forms that you would use. This is the marijuana misdemeanor set aside application. And this actually has a different set of instructions. You must first determine whether you are eligible to apply to have your misdemeanor set aside pursuant to a specific Michigan law. And the eligible convictions include the violation of possession, use, selling marijuana paraphernalia, or a violation of a local ordinance substantially corresponding to one of those I previously named. And next, for the human trafficking application, the instructions for the human trafficking application are similar to that of the basic expungement, the set aside conviction application that we previously showed. If you use this application, however, you must prove to the court that you are in fact a victim of human trafficking, which will require additional evidence outside of what is required to set aside a basic conviction. So first, when you're doing your application, step 1 is to know your record. You need to determine what convictions you have and what can be expunged. So to access your criminal record, you can use Michigan State Police Internet Criminal History Access Tool, which is iChat. iChat is the only public resource for name-based criminal history background checks in Michigan. And when you do this process, your results will be available to view and print once you've paid the $10 fee. And the results are deleted after the 7th day, so we advise that you please print your results so you have that record. Step 2 is the application. So you saw the previous templates, the MC 227, 227A, and 227B. These were created by the State Court Administrative Office, which is SCAO. And the forms list step-by-step instructions for applying to set aside the conviction. And those are on the very last sheet of the application. You must complete an application for each conviction that you wish to set aside. And then you have to get a certified copy of each judgment of sentence and attach it to each application. Then you must swear to the truth of the statements and sign in the presence of a court clerk or a notary public. To get the application notarized, you can go to a bank free of charge or to your local UPS. And also, for those of you who use Michigan Legal Help, which Mike will explain later, the program will automatically populate the correct form for you in case you're a little confused on which form to actually use for your situation. The next step is certified record keeping. You're required to order a certified judgment of sentence from the court clerk from where your conviction actually occurred. And then you must get 5 copies of all the documents. The next step is also fingerprinting. So you'll go to your local law enforcement agency for a fingerprint card and get the fingerprint card and fill it out completely. And there also may be a fee for this, which is typically $10 to $20. But you want to make sure that you send the fingerprint card with your application to the Michigan State Police. So you'll have 5 different applications with 5 different documents to attach. One is for your records, one is for the court, one is to send to the Michigan State Police, one is to send to the Attorney General, and one is to send to the local prosecutor. On both of the remaining copies of your application, you fill out the proof of service located at the bottom of each application. And after you fill this out, you take it to the court and your proof of service is complete. And then the final step in the application, I'm sorry, Kiko, thank you. The final step in the actual filling out of the application is in fact the money and mailing. So you'll make out a money order or check to the state of Michigan, and the application fee is $50. Financial assistance may be available through community organizations, so you may want to reach out to different organizations around you to see if they can compensate your fee. And as stated, you'll mail a copy of the application packet, the fingerprint card, to the Michigan State Police by first-class mail. And then you'll mail a copy of the application packet to the Attorney General and then another to the local prosecutor. And also, these are all first-class mail, so ensure that you're sending them correctly and the addresses are listed on the applications on that last page of instructions. Next slide. Thank you. The hearing. Step 6, outside of the actual application, is to attend the hearing. So after your application is processed with the Michigan State Police, you'll have to attend a hearing in court where you were convicted. And here is where you explain why your conviction should in fact be set aside. And then an optional step that you may take are letters of support. You may want to ask people close to you to write letters of support. You can ask family, friends, employer, a work supervisor, church leaders, etc., so long as they write a letter that includes how they know you, how long they've known you, and positive information about you. This will be helpful in your hearing, which Eric will now explain.
Thank you, Deja. Thank you, Nadine. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Eric Chaika, and I'm an evening student at Detroit Mercy Law. Today, I'm going to discuss what happens at the expungement hearing. I'm also going to review the expungement process for marijuana and traffic offenses, along with multiple offenses that occur in one night. Finally, I'm going to wrap up with some resources to help guide you through the expungement process. I'm going to start with what happens at the hearing. When you're applying for expungement, during the hearing, you will go in front of the judge and explain the reasons why your conviction should be set aside. It is your responsibility to show and tell the judge why your conviction should be set aside, because in many situations, the judge is not required to grant your request just because you ask. There are some things you can talk about that will help show you deserve to have your conviction set aside. These might include your life being changed for the positive since your conviction, or showing that you have not been involved in any criminal activity since the conviction. Some other things you can talk about are involvement or participation in church, work with a food bank, participation in Alcoholics Anonymous or any drug rehab programs, volunteer organizations you're working with, community service or counseling you may be going through. Or perhaps you've been required to pay restitution to your victims. Even if you haven't paid the full restitution amount, if you've made a good faith effort to pay, you should tell the judge about that. It is also critical to tell the judge why it's important for you on a personal level to have your conviction set aside. Now, Nadine gave some examples early on, but maybe you're applying for expungement for like employment reasons. Perhaps you're looking to obtain a professional license and your conviction is a barrier to obtaining that license. Maybe you want to open up housing opportunities, like Nadine mentioned earlier, in the situation of renting a home or obtaining loans, or perhaps you want to chaperone your kids' school events. All of these reasons are important and should be brought up during your hearing. So something else that is important to remember, it is in your best interest to make a good impression. That means dressing in court-appropriate attire, even if it's on Zoom, and being respectful. You should also bring character references with you to court. So these are family, friends, or coworkers who can testify as witnesses about how you're a model citizen and why you deserve to have your conviction expunged. You should also have asked your references to write letters, like mentioned previously, that you file with the court before the hearing. Be sure to bring copies of these letters with you to court so you have them on hand to provide the judge. And remember, there may be opposition to setting aside your conviction. Just as you can petition to have your conviction set aside, the victims of your crimes or law enforcement may appear to oppose setting aside the conviction. Notice is also required to be provided to those who might oppose your expungement. But on the other hand, they may actually support setting aside your conviction for the reasons previously discussed. Next slide, please. After the hearing, if the judge grants your application to set aside the conviction, you need to send a copy of that order to the Michigan Department of Corrections, the Michigan State Police, the Attorney General, the prosecutor, and anyone else who has record of your conviction. That's why it's so important to bring blank orders, at least 4, with you to the hearing. It should be ready for the judge to sign if the expungement is granted. And these orders are included with the expungement packet that is available in the resources we're going to discuss later. The next slide, please. Okay, in this slide, I'm going to cover marijuana misdemeanors. So under the new law, you can petition to set aside one or more marijuana offense, but only if the offense would not be a crime today. So what does that mean? It means convictions on or after December 6, 2018, which is the date recreational marijuana became legal in Michigan for adults. Essentially, if the crime you're convicted of back then would not be a crime today, great, it qualifies to be set aside. Next slide, please. Thank you. After filing an application to set aside a marijuana conviction, the prosecutor has 60 days to respond to your application. The prosecutor can respond stating that they believe your conduct would still constitute a criminal violation today. If that happens, the prosecutor is saying you could still be charged with a crime, could still be charged and convicted of a crime if that conduct occurred today. If the prosecutor does not file an answer to your application within the 60-day period, the court must, within 21 days, enter an order setting aside the conviction or your convictions and serve a copy of the order upon the applicant, which is you, the arresting agency, the prosecuting agency, and the Department of the State Police. And this is another reason why it's so important to prepare multiple blank orders. Next slide, please. Now let's say the prosecutor opposes your application. If that happens, the burden to prove your conviction would still be a crime today is on the objecting prosecuting agency. And something else that's important to note, if your conviction is set aside, you are not entitled to the return of any fees, costs, or fines imposed as part of your sentence for the conviction, nor are you entitled to the return of any money or property forfeited by the prosecuting agency or any law enforcement agency as a result of the conduct leading to your conviction or as a result of the conviction itself. Next slide, please. Okay, in this slide, I am going to cover traffic offenses. So As was mentioned earlier, unfortunately, many traffic offenses do not qualify for expungement. This includes offenses like DUIs and OWIs, offenses committed while operating a commercial vehicle, or any traffic offense that resulted in injury or death. However, for the first time in Michigan, some other traffic offenses are eligible, and this is great news. Examples include driving on a suspended license, failing to show proof of insurance. If your driving offense is a misdemeanor, you can petition for expungement after 3 years. Otherwise, you need to wait 5 years. Next slide, please. So in these slides, I'm going to go over multiple offenses in one day. This is otherwise known as the one bad night provision of the law. So earlier, Nadine mentioned eligibility for expunging up to 3 felony convictions and an unlimited number of misdemeanor convictions. However, there is an exception under the one bad night provision. Under this provision, more than one felony offense or more than one misdemeanor offense must be treated as a single felony or misdemeanor conviction if those offenses arise from the same transaction and happened within a 24-hour period. However, the offense must not be an assaultive crime, nor can it involve the possession or use of a dangerous weapon, nor can it be a crime that carries a penalty of 10 or more years in prison. And again, this is specific for the one bad night provision. Next slide, please. So finally, these are some resources where you can seek help. MichiganLegalHelp.org is one of the best resources to help you determine if and how your conviction can be set aside. Michigan Works is another great resource where you can actually get assistance in creating the application. And they may actually have funding available and some financial assistance in some situations. Your local Michigan Works really is one of the best places to start first on your expungement journey. 2 more resources are the Supreme Court of Michigan's website on expungement, along with Safe and Just Michigan, which is a really nice PDF that's very simple to read and has a ton of useful information. Other resources are the Counsel and Advocacy Law Line, or CALL, and for the Upper Peninsula in Lower Northern Peninsula area, Michigan Legal Services can be contacted at the number on the screen. CALL and Michigan Legal Services are other great places to start out. So that's everything from me. I appreciate everyone's time, and I hope the presentation was informative. Now I'm going to turn the reins over to our other presenter, Michael, who's going to review some of these resources in detail. Mike, floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you to the students who went over an incredibly complex new set of laws that are due to go into effect. So one of the things I thought I could do, so just to kind of rewind and reintroduce myself a little bit, I'm a staff attorney with the Michigan Legal Help Program, and the Michigan Legal Help Program offers free information about Michigan laws and procedures through our website, michiganlegalhelp.org. And one of the areas that we cover is expungement. So what I'm going to do is just give a brief present overview of our website, and it looks like it's showing up on my screen. Can I get a thumbs up from somebody just to make sure they're seeing? Perfect. So this is what the Michigan Legal Help website looks like. It's really user-friendly. We have information about COVID-19 just because that's a whole nother major topic or major interest area currently. But one of the ways that you can navigate the website is either scrolling down and finding a category that you think fits your legal area, or you can also use this little magnifying glass. It's the search option, as all websites have, and you can type whatever you're searching for. So just for purposes of this, we're going to go to Crime Graphic and ID and select that topic. So, and at this point, you're going to see all of the information we have related to criminal law, traffic laws, and laws relating to IDs. The very top one you'll see is information about criminal convictions and setting them aside, also known as expungement. So if you click on that top level, what you'll get is a toolkit that covers all of the expungement area. And what you're seeing now is a prompt to see whether you need help finding information. And if so, we have different tools available to help you find that in terms of a guide to legal help. Another place where you can get help is by clicking this little orange Need Help button at the bottom. And if you click on that button between 11 and 3 weekdays, you can chat with a person and they can help you find the information you're looking for. So after that little plug, let's talk a little bit more about what's in this expungement toolkit. So you'll notice that there are common questions that cover expungement. So these are questions that we get often from people wanting to learn more about expungement, either the process, the law, whatever. And so this is a really quick way. If you have a very specific question, it might actually be covered in one of these common questions. You'll notice towards the right, we have a form section and there's a do-it-yourself expungement tool. So this tool is, we are in the process of updating this tool and we're hoping it'll be ready by Monday. So that way the first day the law takes effect, first weekday the law takes effect, it should be up and running and people can use it. So what this tool will do is it will screen people for eligibility, and for those who are eligible, it will populate the appropriate applications. We are populating, we do have the capability of populating all 3 expungement applications. So for situations that call for 3 separate applications, you will get all 3. If you only need a general application, you'll get that. If you only need one for those special misdemeanor marijuana convictions, you'll get that. And lastly, for the crimes committed as a direct result of being a victim of human trafficking, you can get that application as well. We are still in the process of updating it. So that we're hoping will be live Monday. If you click on it now, what you'll get is the tool for the current law, which is, I don't know if you want to call it the old law. It's the law that's still in effect today. Underneath that, you'll see there are articles that go over the expungement process and fixing mistakes on a criminal record. Both of these articles are incredibly important because sometimes people don't actually need to set aside or expunge something. What they need to do is correct a mistake in their criminal record. And if that's your situation, you can read this article, but just for time purposes, I'm only going to go over the expungement article right now. And this article is now up to date based on the law that's going to go into effect on Sunday. So you'll notice that it has each of the sections that you can click on. So if you have a particular section you're interested in, you can click on that and go directly to that section. We created this, we formatted this article as what's called an accordion style. So what that means is that there's a brief description about what this particular topic is about. And if you want to learn more about it, you click on it and then you get all the information about it. One of the reasons why we formatted it this way is because, as you just heard, this new set of laws is incredibly dense, incredibly complicated, and incredibly long. So in order to make this really user-friendly, we have this so that way if people are interested in learning about a specific topic, they can just click on that. Or if they want to learn about everything, they can go through and they can open each of the sections and just go through and read it. So that is it for the presentation on Michigan legal help. Just remember, that's all you have to type into whatever search engine you're using. And from there, you can find all of these resources.
All right, thank you everyone for that wonderful presentation. Hank, do we have any questions to answer in the chat?
Yes. Thank you all to all the presenters for your highly eloquent, informative, and well-rounded presentation. I'm quite impressed with your wealth of knowledge. Let's see. So, number one, what information do I need to get an expungement?
Who wants to answer that question?
I think I can start by saying the first thing you want to do, like Deja and I mentioned, is probably look at what convictions you have on your record using the iChat tool that Deja went in at length to discuss. Go to iChat, probably look at your convictions, check to see the number of convictions that you have, the type of convictions that you have, and then accordingly fill out the application based on that. That's technically where you want to start first. And of course, utilize the resources that we outlined in the presentation, probably starting with Michigan Works Office.
Yeah. And I just want to add that if you just search iChat, ICHAT in Google, it should come up. And that is your first step. But to remember that the app or the information may not be 100% accurate, but it's your best starting point to determine what convictions may be on your record and what you are eligible to expunge based on that information.
And if I can just add that when an iChat is created, it will have 3 columns. The first is the arrest column. The second is the charging column by the prosecutor if there were charges that were pressed or initiated. And the third column is the adjudication column. And that is the information that the Michigan State Police has for Michigan specific crimes that will give you the information about what crimes you have been convicted of. And as others have said, it's not always accurate. So if you feel that that information is inaccurate, the other place that you would want to go is to the court, which is identified in that third column. And you may request to view your file. And sometimes hard copies of the file are there. Other times you might have to make a request and look at microfiche once that information is located. But especially if you don't believe you were convicted of something that's listed in that third column, you know from that third column the court, and from there you can go to that court and ask to see your files.
And I'm actually going to just piggyback a little bit off of what Judge Rick just said. So there are situations where on an iChat report, there might be something in the arrest segment or the charges segment, but nothing in the conviction segment. And if you see that on your record, that's actually, for the most, like, I want to say the majority of the time, that's a mistake. There shouldn't be just an arrest and charge section ever on an iChat. So that means that something isn't right. What you can do is you can contact the arresting police agency, or you could contact the prosecutor in the case to kind of get a better idea of what's going on. You can also reach out to your local legal aid office to see if they're able to help you with this type of situation. But there are times when people just show those two things, and that's not supposed to happen. It could be that you had a conviction that was dismissed, that was deferred, something along those lines, but it should not be appearing on your record just as those two things.
Very good. What is the difference between expunging and sealing?
So in Michigan specifically, record sealing is where the physical record or your physical criminal record doesn't exist anymore just because it's been removed from file, but the record is actually still there. In Michigan specifically, the process of expungement will clear your record of any of those convictions that you may have, just as if they never occurred. So if you have a felony on your record for something, felony conviction, and you expunge, you apply to get your record expunged and your application is granted, then if someone looks at your record besides law enforcement, it's just as though the crime never occurred at all. versus record sealing. Sometimes it's just hidden from certain entities, but it's still physically present. So expungement is the more thorough clearing of your record completely.
I would add to that sometimes there is a delay when someone goes through the expungement process. It takes some time for that record to actually be expunged. And what is recommended is that that a person will want to wait a month or maybe 2 months and then run an iChat. And that's the way that one can verify whether that record has been removed from the system. But as Nadine indicated, law enforcement and courts still will have the ability to see it, but for the general public, they cannot. And you are not required, once a conviction is expunged, you don't have to, there is no obligation to say I had a prior conviction, because it doesn't exist.
Okay. Let's see. I am trying to join the military service. If I expunge my criminal record, will they let me join?
I think I'll jump in and say that's pretty fact specific. And so we really can't comment on what someone else might do. Mike, did you have any thoughts along
No,
those
my
lines?
response would have just been maybe. You know, we know that, as Judge Rick and her students mentioned, we know that in Michigan, once you have your record expunged, you never have to disclose that particular conviction. However, if you apply for certain law enforcement positions, they'll have access to that record. We don't know what the military will look at. We don't know what their background checks entail. And because of that, we can't really give information about that. And of course, we can't offer legal advice in this presentation. One of the things you may want to do is contact either your local Michigan Works or your local legal aid office, call Michigan Indian Legal Services to see if they can match you with an attorney who might be able to research this a little bit more for you.
Yes. Okay. How long is the process going to take?
I think I can jump in here. As far as the application process, it takes however long you want it to take, as far as getting all of your information together, going and using the iChat tool, and then going to your county clerk to get the certified record and sending that off. However, the actual hearing, it's not instantaneous. There is a process which it goes to the Michigan State Police, and they have to actually review your record, and then a hearing can be scheduled. So anywhere from a month to 2 months, depending on your local practice, the court clerk may schedule a hearing date at the time of filing. And then you'll have your set date, or you'll hear from or hear a date for your hearing at a later time.
And Deja's absolutely right. I'm just going to add that in the process that the Michigan State Police are going to perform in their background check, they're also going to send a copy of your fingerprints and the materials off to the FBI as well. So that's what kind of delays the process as well. So it's the Michigan State Police that are running a background check and waiting to hear back from the FBI. Once they have those records, then they send them to the court. And that's where the delay comes in. And usually courts are really good on setting the hearing out long enough. So that way the Michigan State Police has time to do that. Or your local court could require you to call at a later date once those background checks are in, and you can schedule a hearing at that time.
Okay. Will this PowerPoint be available after the presentation?
Yes, it will. The actual presentation itself is being recorded and will be posted on the Michigan Indian Legal Services website. We can also make a copy available of the slides from the PowerPoint on our website. So check back there in a week or so. We should be able to have it up. In addition, I'll mention that the survey that I talked about at the beginning has a place at the end for you to put your email address in if you would like information about future presentations. And we could also provide a link to the video recording if you put your email address in on the survey. So we will be posting a link to that survey on Facebook here shortly as well.
Okay. Do I have to disclose an expunge charge on a job application?
No, so I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think functionally what an expungement process does for you is that you don't have to mention those kind of things, regardless of where you're applying, whether it's with an employee or employer or housing or a bank or anything of that sort. Expungement effectively clears your record so that you don't ever have to mention that you had a prior conviction. And the entities who do need to know if you had a prior conviction, notwithstanding expungement, is usually law enforcement, and they will see that because they can obtain a non-public record of your convictions. So no, you don't have to mention that.
Oh, okay. If a charge is expunged, will it show up on a background check?
I think it depends who's conducting it. If it's an employer, then no. Unless that employer is law enforcement, but if it is law enforcement, then yes. So I think it's specific to your case. Depends who's looking, but more often than not, no, nothing will show up on a criminal or on a background check generally.
Well, and it might be worth mentioning, it's always good to keep a record for yourself so that if a question arises, you can then provide that and say, this, this was removed from my record legally. And hopefully that will clear up any confusion.
And one of the things I'll mention is when I went through that toolkit really quickly, the article that I mentioned, the other one was fixing mistakes on your record. At this point, that's considered a mistake. If an expungement is showing up on any sort of background check, that's a mistake, and there are specific steps you can take to correct that. Whether it's the first step is really figuring out where that record is located. Is it with some sort of private entity that is collecting data? Is it with one of the credit bureaus? And then if it is, then you can go from there and work on correcting that.
And the reason that the legislature expanded the expungement laws was out of recognition that even though people had served their time, made their restitution, that in some instances, crimes became life offenses because they created barriers. And we've talked about a number of those barriers. Another barrier, of course, would be jury service, right? And the legislature realized that that was not fair. And so I would not want anyone to be left with the impression that you're hiding something because you've had an expungement. No, you're not hiding something. A judge has reviewed your matter and has said it is consistent with the public interest that you should no longer have this appear, on your record. So it is not deceitful in any way. And it truly is an opportunity to get past some hardships that people have endured for longer than they ever should have.
Hmm. Okay. Let's see. I am currently living out of the state of Michigan. How do I go about going through this process? Will this affect the process? Do I need to come to Michigan to actually do this?
So I'll start off this, and then Judge Rick might jump in, and if one of the students wants to jump in, well, you definitely can. So right now, because of the pandemic, a lot of the court processes have been changed to accommodate people not going to court and not necessarily going in person to get records. While that in some cases has lengthened the time of certain cases, it's also allowed for people to do everything remotely. You know, whether that's actually figuring out how your court is taking filings at this time, whether it's through email, whether it's through e-filing, whether it's through some other form, you can potentially do everything remotely, but you do need to contact that court because some courts are still doing most of their hearings virtually. And if that's the case, you might be able to have your hearing completely virtual. The one instance where you would have to come to Michigan would be for your hearing if it's not remote. Everything else can basically be mailed in or filed electronically as long as the court allows it.
I would agree with what Mike said. The only other thing that may require someone coming to Michigan would be for fingerprinting purposes. I'm not sure because the statute specifically requires a certain form that is used by law enforcement here in Michigan. I don't know and would want someone to not be tripped up because they didn't get fingerprinted properly. But it may be as easy as contacting the Michigan State Police to see if other jurisdictions, police agencies could do the fingerprinting. I'm not sure about that piece.
Okay. Uh, I was found not guilty. Do I still need to have my record expunged?
No, there shouldn't be anything on your record if you were found not guilty for that particular offense. If there is, then that means it's a mistake. And again, you can go to that article and figure out how to correct that mistake.
What if my petition is denied?
I can take this one. If your petition is denied, then there'll be a 3-year waiting period for when you can actually reapply. So you can reapply, but you do have to wait 3 years from when your petition was actually denied by the court.
Okay. Let's see. I have a friend who asks for my help with an expungement. I know nothing about expungements before, but feel much more, I guess this is more a compliment, but feel much more equipped to help my friend. In fact, with the spiffy resources available on Michigan Legal Help, I think my friend should be able to help himself. What a great resource.
And remember too that if your friend does want an attorney to help him through the process, there are a lot of resources available depending on where he is in the state. If he's in the southern part of the state, he can contact the Counsel and Advocacy Law Line, and they hopefully would be able to connect him to an attorney. Also, his local Michigan Works agency, or if he's in the Upper Peninsula or the Northern Lower Peninsula, he could contact Michigan Indian Legal Services to apply for assistance from an attorney for this process.
Very good. That is all the questions.
All right. Well, I would like to again thank all of our presenters tonight. This has been a really informative presentation. And as we mentioned before, it is being recorded. So if you missed it or if you want to go back and watch it again, it will be up on the Michigan Indian Legal Services website. And I believe you can also rewatch it on Facebook. We will post a link to our survey on Facebook. So if you would be so kind as to fill that out to give us feedback on this presentation, we would appreciate it. And with that, would anyone like to give any last words before we sign off?
I just would like to thank not only Michigan Indian Legal Services and Michigan Legal Help, Norica, Hank, Mike, but also the University of Detroit Mercy Law School and the three, I told you they were stellar students who worked very hard at putting together this presentation. You all did a fantastic job, and I know you're going to make great lawyers someday. So thank you all.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right.
Agree.
Thank you all for watching tonight. This concludes our presentation, and follow us for future presentations on Michigan Indian Legal Services Facebook page. Thank you.